As a career coach, a lot of people tend to ask me, what's going on with the bonuses in the finance industry? How high are they? How much money are people really making? And that's what I'd like to cover with you in this video, right? We've got a wide variation, depends on whether the bank's doing well, whether your performance is good as an employee, but also different departments there. Some banks are growing, some banks aren't. All types of different scenarios. And here we're going to start with JPMorgan, right? In this case, they paid 18 people in London more than $5 million last year. So of course, a significant amount of money. Let's go through a bit of their here. So JP Morgan for its London office in 2024 reveals the average bonus paid to 486 material risk takers in London's corporate and investment bank was $973,000, right? So quite a lot of money, almost $1 million were paid for over 480 people, right? So almost 500 people made $1 million in London working for JP Morgan. And then we have other instances at JP Morgan whereby 370 people earned more than 1 million last year. So that's quite a lot of money, of course, right? So you've got large amounts of people, hundreds of people making millions of dollars at big banks. And if we look at this table that you can see right here, is that we've got pay bands here. In 2024, as you can see where my mouse is at right here, 157 people made $1 million to $1.5 million back in. Then you can see the amount of money other people are making, right? $6 million was made by 18 people, and overall 371 employees made this amount of money, right? Quite a lot of money to be making millions of dollars at the bank. So that's a rough idea of the amount of money you can really make in finance. And JP Morgan, as it says here, they are likely to increase their bonuses in 2025, right? The US bank has lifted the bonus cap. Lots of regulation is being deregulated, particularly around bonuses, despite, all the governments left are in bed big banks, right? They're no different from a right-wing government. So they removed a lot of the bonus caps to make it easier for banks to pay bigger bonuses in larger lump sums of cash rather than spreading it throughout the year, which they were kind of finding a loophole in the finance industry. Now, before we continue, I just want to give you a bit of background to myself. So I've worked at banks like this, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, successfully interviewed at JP Morgan and many other banks. And I think the key lesson here, which is covered in my course, is around leveraging skills beats company loyalty, right? A lot of people are loyal to a company, and we're going to go through a few more examples here. And they think, if I'm loyal to a company, I'll make a lot of money. But if you're not getting the progress you're looking for, you have to think about the skills you're developing and how those skills are really going to allow you to beat the company loyalty in terms of just sticking around, right? If you want to job hop, it could make sense for you. And these are instances we're going to learn through a few extra stories here, news stories around. And if you're interested, there is career coaching to take control of your power, pay, and freedom, and I earn those high salaries at some of those bits which I've covered throughout my videos. So link in description if you want to speak with me. But let's continue through this, right? JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley, right? They cut their heads and raised pay in London last year. Let's see what's actually going on here. So start with the good news. JP Morgan paid an average of $430,000 per head in London in 2024, right? Which was up from 410 in the previous year. So almost, let's just say 400,000 roughly, you're getting paid as a London, right? And that's not including the bonus, I would assume. I would probably be base pay. But the thing is, there is a lot of volatility, right? Morgan Stanley, on the other hand, right, announced back in March, as you can see here, Morgan Stanley announced back in March that it intends to cut 2,000 people, 2,000 business heads worldwide, right? JP Morgan intends to have some job cuts in 2025 also, right? Throughout March to September. Now, interesting here is, like I say, you can make a lot of money in the finance industry, but it's quite volatile. You don't want to be one of those people who get paid, $500,000 a year and then you lose your job and you can't find another job that's going to pay that much, or you have to take a massive pay cut. That's why you got to save and invest and not just become a materialistic kind of person with lots of lifestyle inflation. You see this in the tech industry now, right? Many people had those salaries making 200K a year, not having to do loads of work, but making a lot for the work they were doing, and then they didn't really save or invest that. They just thought, I'm making 200 grand a year as a senior engineer, senior tech guy, lead, And then they haven't paid, and now they're stuck in a situation where they might be unemployed for 6 months to a year or two and take a massive pay cut for their next opportunity. So these are the type of situations to really be aware of how volatile it can be. If you've got on one hand people getting paid $430,000 a year, and then all of a sudden the bank is also, there's going to be job cuts, and Morgan Stanley is going to cut business heads, then that really shows you how volatile it can be, right? And then if we move on to the next story, let's see what's going on here. It's not just Morgan Stanley that is making job cuts to business heads. Also, we have JPMorgan, right? JPMorgan removed 500 people from its corporate and investment banking department, right? It's the department of JPMorgan that deals with mergers and acquisitions, capital markets, debt markets, equity markets, corporate banking, sales and trading. They had 500 people who were removed from that particular division, right? That's going to help them save a lot of money, but lots of high paid employees have lost their job, and they're going to struggle to find their next job, because particularly when you're at the more senior level, you're at the higher pay, and there's not as many opportunities at those senior managing director, let's just say, levels, you're going to struggle to find your next opportunity. And that's why you have to be careful, like I mentioned earlier, to save and invest, so you're not one of those people who are dealing with all this type of volatility in your income. Now, the next example I want to give is this female JP Morgan banker, and she's making more money in terms of a cash bonus versus Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of JP Morgan. So I don't want to hear about gender equality anymore, because there are many women making a lot of money, and there's lots of statistics. In some cases, women are making a lot more money than men. I would think a better way of looking at this would be there's a handful of men at the top making a lot of money, and increasingly there's a handful of women at the top making a lot of money, rather than, oh, women are disadvantaged for whatever reason. There are many men who are really struggling financially under this rigged economy. So let's learn a bit more about how much money she's making. So her name, as you can see here, this lady's name, her name is Mary Callan Eredez, and she's the CEO of JP Morgan's asset and wealth management business. So the head of asset management and wealth management businesses. And she was the second paid JP Morgan executive last year. She was paid $28.5 million in 2024. And also that comprised of $11 million cash bonus. And this is more than twice as big as Jamie Dimon's $5 million cash bonus. So I'm sure overall Jamie Dimon's still making more money, but her cash bonus is double what his cash bonus would be, which is good, because some of the bonuses are typically paid in stock, right? Like JP Morgan stock. But if you get a massive cash bonus, she could take that 11 million and dump it into Bitcoin right now and make, a massive amount of over the next 10 years. Now, other examples here, she's got 8.3 million of restricted stock units, which again are the stock invested in JP Morgan. And then, there's all these other instances. The pay bonuses is kind of complex. It's not just cash bonuses, stock bonuses, but this is at least an example of how it can vary, how that's paid. Now we got another example of Vis Raghavan, right? He is one of the head of banking and executive vice chairman at Citi. So let's look at some of the details about his pay. See, this guy got paid a salary of $23 million. And on top of that, he made $40 million in stock compensation, right? So he got paid a crazy amount of money, even for a banker, right? $23 million last year, and also $40 million worth of stock to compensate the stock he left behind at JP Morgan, because he moved from JP Morgan over to Citi. So this is a case of job hopping and how it can really work out, right, for people. If he's getting $40 million in stock compensation for the stock he left behind at JP Morgan, and this shows his proficiency at negotiating, right? And this, of course, people are not negotiating a salary and a bonus of $40 million, but it shows how if you add leverage and you have a proven reputation at one company, in this case, this guy at JP Morgan, when you move to the other company, Citigroup, in this case, another bank, he's managed to negotiate a similar level of high bonus, right? Now, let's look at Citi, right, in terms of the volatility in jobs. Now, we've got this story here. In the middle and back office at Citi, there were tales of woe, right? There were low bonuses that seem to have not been uncommon, as in many people are getting low bonuses. Salaries are not increasing. Someone says their bonus was $1.8 thousand, so not $1 million, right? Just $1,800. I had no salary increase, says one Citi insider, even though I had performance reviews, and I saved Citi through my operational work, working in operations, one of those type of jobs. They saved Citi $15 million, got a bonus of $1,800, right? Again, they saved Citi $15 million and they got a bonus of $1,800. And that's why I say, if you're not in these high paying roles, there's no clear sign of you getting a promotion, then just do the bare minimum. Be a B plus player. Just do slightly above average so you don't get fired. Going above and beyond, unless you're going to get a big pay bump because of it, just be average or slightly above average and focus on other income sources and job hopping and increase your salary through that way. Now, we've got some other details about this, right? Because this person got this low bonus of $1,800. They're looking for a new job because they realize they're not going to go too far in this particular situation. That's when you got to realize, you got to read in between the lines. If you're getting low bonuses, it's best just to job hop. It means they don't value you and they want you to leave. And either they're going to make you leave through a layoff or making your life hell. So you have to consider what your options are. It says here, this may not do much to save the angst of middle and back office Citi people who feel they've been dealt with unfairly. Many people are saying that they've worked, 12-hour extra work because there are layoffs and they have to extra work for the employees who've been pushed out the company, and they've received almost no bonus for doing their job and covering someone else's job for, more work and less employees. And then managers said that they look after you and they don't. And this is what you've got to look out for. Managers love to keep you working hard. If you work hard, you get promoted next year and a pay rise next year. You'll get a bonus next year, and that day never comes. And that's when it's good to job hop. And I've seen employees wait way too long at companies. Stick around for an extra 2 or 3 thinking they're going to get promoted. So they just job hop, right? And they're annoyed. They burn themselves out and then they job hop. Well, that's what you've got to look for. And I help you with this through my coaching, right? Is to look for the signs of when it's a good time to job hop. You don't want to be job hopping all the time, but you want to be in a situation where you want to get salary increases that really matter to you, that give you that high quality of life you're looking for. You don't want to be stuck in a situation where you're like, oh, maybe I should stick around, maybe I'll get promoted next year. You got to read in between the lines here. And then lastly, it says, another Citi employee told us they felt that their effort last year wasn't recommended at all, weren't rewarded at all. Some middle office employees received 2% of their salary as bonus. Citi is a bad place if you're in a middle office job, right? So you're front office making revenue, but you're in the middle operations, finance, supporting the sales and traders. So the one thing I want to point out, you need to think about what companies you're working for, because sometimes the companies that pay well for your type of role might not be the biggest bank, right? Sometimes the companies that give you a good lifestyle, work-life balance and decent pay might be a mid-sized bank versus a big bank. Same thing with big tech and small tech or little tech, right? You want to be careful of what company you're going for. Like how will it impact your particular role, right? She mentions that middle office employees get too bad place to be working at Citigroup if you are in the middle office. So there might be another bank, like let's just say a smaller investment bank, TD Investment Bank, NatWest Markets, another investment bank, and you might work in middle office there. It's not as popular as Goldman Sachs, but at least I'll get paid decent and the work-life balance is better. So you've got to think about this, and those are the type of stories you have to look out for in terms of learning what's actually going on here. I want to move on to this particular example around difficult demoralizing culture that can occur when banks are making cuts. Started with the big old bonuses, right? The big old booty, the big old bonuses of, getting paid all this amount of dollars. But at the end, we've got job cuts, right? At banks like Citi. So this article says, at Citi, they cut 5,000 jobs last year, taking out many layers of management. And this, I'm going to cover it in future videos. Many people in middle management are losing their jobs and they're struggling to find their next job, right? And typically because they're middle management, they're slightly older, they might be in their late 30s, early 40s, and they've got massive financial commitments. They're not someone who's Gen Z or millennial who might not own property or things like that. They just need to cover their basic living costs. They're people who are older, who have maybe a wife and kids and things like that. And they've got lots of higher expenses, expensive holidays they're going on and things like that. So they're kind of struggling. So at Citi, they cut 5,000 jobs. They're in the process of cutting another 10,000 jobs. So they're going to cut 15,000 jobs. That's a lot of jobs globally, right? Removing costs in the middle office, right? Technology, operations, those where the big job losses are going to be. And it's going to last into this year and next year. So it's a very difficult time for many people out there. This seems to be causing predictable problems. Morale is quite low, and the recent town halls said there's lots of toxicity and stress, and HR are stepping in, right? So what you got to understand is that if there's toxicity and stress and people raising these points at town halls, it's quite interesting, right? Because if people or employees are venting at town halls and saying, oh, we're not sure about our job stability, we're kind of unhappy here, normally people figure out, okay, they might get pushed out or deal with a layoff in the next few years, so they just drop. But the fact that at Citi, but also HSBC, which I covered in another video, people are speaking up now. It seems like many people are really fed up with poor treatment in the workplace, or lack of job stability, lack of bonuses, or pay keeping up with inflation. People's impatience and the social instability is not just showing on the streets of like the UK, where you've seen riots, or in LA, or in America, throughout Europe, you've seen more like social instability in the streets, but also in the workplace. People are just fed up with the system. They're fed up with their management. They're fed up with the government, things like that. People are really speaking up and just saying we've had enough with everything, right? So this is quite interesting that people are risking their personal, professional brand to kind of speak up and say we've had enough. And then it says here, Citi has been bonuses to keep certain people happy, right, in the wealth division. So what's happening here, some people are not getting bonuses, they're getting low bonuses, but it's people who are in the good books of senior management who are keeping their job by getting paid bigger bonuses to stop them from jumping to other banks. So it really goes to show, if you're in the good books of senior management, that'll really benefit you. What's interesting is how companies can really manipulate anything, right? They can manufacture negative narratives about you if they want to fire you, but also what they could do is simply redefine what your job is and redefine what your job title is and how senior or junior you are. What it says here is each category of job types and job levels at Citi, right? They can just change those minimum and maximum salaries, and you'll be demoted into a lower paying role, what tasks you do. So what they're doing right now at Citi, they're reviewing all the work everyone does and reviewing whether they need to be paid that salary, whether they can lose their job, whether they can outsource the job. They're trying to go through a transformation process, a cost saving process. So say you're doing your job, you just started, you've been working there for a year or so, and then they ask you to list out all the tasks you do in an Excel file, they review it, and they go, well, a lot of the work you do is actually admin work. We can offshore that to India or Mumbai, and we can fire you, or you can keep doing your job and we'll just give you a lower job title, lower pay, and you don't really do that many technical tasks. We don't really need you here, but we'll keep you here for now. Right, so they could just change the definition of what your job is, how high priority it is. If you're a manager, you could have a very high prestigious job title like executive director, and they might be like, well, like you're doing is what a vice president does, so we're not going to call you executive director, we're going to demote you to vice president. You're going to have to take a 20% pay, or I don't think it'll be 20%, they'll probably say you've got to take a 10% cut, and you're going to change your job title one step down because we have to redefine what you're doing. So many people are taking a hit to their ego, their social status, their income level, less job stability. It's a very difficult time for some people. While some people are becoming multimillionaires and making millions of dollars, other people are in very difficult scenarios. Then it says, at the same time, FT claims that Citi, Financial Times, claims that Citigroup is planning to promote fewer employees, right? Promoting them, fewer employees, which means that fewer pay rises. So imagine you're working hard, you're trying to get a promotion, the bank all of a sudden announces, we need to review everyone's work, we're going to be changing your job title, you're going to pay cut, less people are going to get promoted. Many people are trying to leave Citi right now and find a good job elsewhere that's going to pay them well, right? And imagine you're working hard to getting promoted, and then all of a sudden the company says, we're just not going to promote people that much. That's why job hopping makes sense in many cases. And that's why it goes back to the lesson I shared with you at the start, right? You need to leverage your skills rather than be loyal to a company. In one case, we got JPMorgan maybe treating some of its employees quite well with million dollar salaries. Then you got Citigroup effectively shrinking their middle office. That's when you need to job by developing the relevant skills. And these are all the things I try to teach you through my coaching, link in description, to take control, right? You want to take control of your career. You don't want to be working for a bank and all of a sudden they're like, okay, well, we don't need you anymore. It's like, have you prepared for that day? Have you put yourself in to make that big money and live long term? Do you want to take control of your career? You want to build power, pay, and freedom. This is what I've been able to teach many of my clients. I'm working with them right now. If you want help with that, let me know. What do you think about these stories in the comments? Let me know. You've got JPMorgan, paying 18 people $5 million or more. You've got job cuts both at JPMorgan and Morgan Stanley for some of these high paying employees, right? On the other hand, we've got the female head of asset management and wealth management making double the cash bonus of the CEO of the company. Then all these Citi complaining about senior management making a lot of money, but them not getting any basic bonuses, basic level bonuses. So all types of turmoil is going on. And this is what I was trying to show with you in this video, because many people are going to be like, oh, banker bonuses, bankers always get big bonuses, right? They're all going to be living the good life. Well, it can be a volatile path for you. And even if you're in big tech or something like that, you could be making a lot of 1 year and not so much the next year, right? And you've got to be ready to job hop. That's why office politics, understanding the dynamics around you is so important, right? There's no point you working hard in a department that's in decline, right? And that's what I covered throughout my career code, which is a course I have, because many people are like, they don't understand. Are you on the high priority projects? Are you on the projects that are driving up profitability? Are you working in a department that's in decline and not making a lot of money for the company and your job's at risk? Then there's no point working hard. You might as well shift to another department that's making more money. It's all about being aware of what's going on around you and in your industry, not just simply, oh, how can I make as much money as possible? Or how can I work harder to make more money? It's about making smart decisions. So let me know in the comments what you think about these stories, and 2 recommended videos on your screen right now. Link in description to reach out to me, and I'll see you in the next video.